Hey everybody, today Rahdo runs through his top 25 most anticipated games for 2023. And first of all, let me apologize by saying I'm going to be kind of low energy in this video compared to my normal upbeat self because I am racked with flu. My body is one gigantic ache. I am very cold and clammy, and yet I'm also kind of shivering, and I am just barely making through with my wife's honey water she brought me and also some Hall's Breezers. This top 25 brought to you by Hall's Breezers, almost. But it's not only that I've got to help me through. I've got the whole gang, all the contributors are here to tell you their most anticipated games also. So we're going to start with Shea and then hear from Ryan and Ruel, Kimberly, Amy, Maggie, Grant, and then finally Paulo will all tell you what they're looking forward to in the new year. And then I'll circle back around with two separate lists. My first list will be my top 10 games I'm most anticipating that I have not played. And then after that, I'll have my top 15 that I'm anticipating that I have played. Okay, let's get going.
Hey folks, so my most anticipated game of 2023 is the Slay the Spire board game. I am a huge fan of the Slay the Spire video game, which if you don't know is a roguelike deck builder that already owes a lot to the deck building card games that we're all familiar with. So it's really interesting to see this come back to its roots and be an actual board game again. Or for the first time, really, in this case. Now, I've heard that it is basically the same as the video game, though a bit more streamlined, but what I'm really excited about is the fact that it is a co-op game, meaning that I'll be able to play it with other people, and I'll get to see how the different classes, interact with each other. That is something that the video game was never able to do, so that is something that I'm really excited about. So that's my most anticipated game of 2023. All right, folks, see you next year.
Hi, Rahdo. It's Ryan from Knights Around the Table. You already know that. You asked me which board game I'm most looking forward to in 2023. Well, when you take too much food on your plate and you can't eat it all and you have to say something like, oh, I guess my eyes were bigger than my stomach. Well, my eyes are bigger than my board game storage space. So I'm just like, I feel like Mr. Creosote from The Meaning of Life. I'm just bursting at the seams here, and the thought of trying to wedge one more board game into these shelves just is kind of a daunting thought to me. So I'm more about trying to deepen my collection instead of broaden it. That means upgrading components and making everything look really nice and feel really nice when you play it. So, it's not the sexiest answer to give you, but I'm most looking forward to stuff like expansions for board games I already know I like and own. So when I look at the horizon and I think about expansions that I've heard or rumored, I don't even know if they're confirmed yet, so don't take my word for it. But something like, I think there's going to be a second expansion to Lost Ruins of Arnak, and if you played the first expansion to Lost Ruins of Arnak, you know how much extra joy that expansion brought to that game experience. If you checked out my list of top 10 favorite board games of all time that I did with my wife Cheryl, you'll know that my number 2 game is getting an expansion. It was just kickstarted last year. I did a how to play for it for your channel, and that's coming up, I think, next year, but you can never really count on crowdfunding, can you? Beyond that, I always keep an eye out for what Mind Clash is doing next year. They've got Voidfall coming out. I think Septima is going to land in the same year, so I always like to see their output. I know I've got Voidfall on the way, so I'm excited for that to arrive. But more than anything, more than any one particular game or expansion, what I'm looking forward to most in 2023 is carving out the time in my schedule to have friends over or go to their places, or even maybe rent a cottage and do a little retreat and play games with them. More play, less collect, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's my answer. Take it or leave it. Thanks for asking.
Hi friends, Ruel here to talk about my most anticipated game of 2023, and that is Tidal Blades 2, The Rise of the Unfolders. Now, I got to play an early production copy of this in a sponsored preview on my channel, Tabletop Tonight, with James Hudson, the president of Druid City Games, and wow, I was blown away. So I love the world of Tidal Blades, the original game. It's just this beautiful world that honestly I would pay good money to watch a movie or watch a TV series based in this world. The original game, the first one, was sort of like Champions of Midgard, really cool dice chucking game. Now the second game, this one that I'm looking forward to, nothing like it. It's a dungeon crawl, but it's what I'm calling a next level dungeon crawl. Literally, it's taking a dungeon crawl to new levels where new things are being done, like the Nexus grid, this action grid that you're using. So it's almost like a more Euro-y in design. So you're going to be doing some deck building, and then depending on where you place it in your grid, it's a little more puzzly. You're going to be getting resources, you're going to get combat, you're going to get movement. Oh, it's so clever. And, Tim Eisner, Ben Eisner, two rock solid designers. Actually, I really enjoyed, Tidal Blades, the original game, and also from Tim Eisner, Canopy, a wonderful push your luck game set in this another beautiful world of the rainforest. But Tidal Blades 2, The Rise of the Unfolders, this is going to be a big hit. It's a campaign game. It's got 18 scenarios. Folks, I am pumped about it. I hope you check it out too. That is Tidal Blades 2, The Rise of the Unfolders.
Hey everybody, Kimberly here, and I can't wait to tell you what I'm looking forward to in 2023. Now, my pick for this is actually a game that I did a run through for right here on Rahdo's channel. And I have to tell you, it is the perfect melding or blending of RPG and board game. So if you haven't guessed it by now, it is Kinfire Chronicles Night's Fall. I loved that game. I cannot wait to get my copy because I had to pass on my preview copy after I finished the video, but I played through 6 different missions in that, and I didn't have to, but I wanted to. I just kept playing this game that just developed these wonderful characters, and I feel like there was a lot to like in this game. My favorite part of this game is that you have characters and they have their own decks. These decks are wholly unique to your character and what your strengths are. And when you pick these decks, they are going to have a really cool, super special activation card. But you have these abilities, you have these one-offs, you have these really cool weapons and just things that you can do on your turn. So every character feels different, and every player at the table feels like they really contribute to all the different aspects of the game. Now, there is combat, which is a super, super cool thing because it has a fantastic bag drawing feature of who is actually playing and what are they doing. So you reach in the bag that has all the baddies and a lot of different activations for the baddies. They don't do the same thing every turn, and you have all the goodies. And so you reach in, you pull out these little discs, and they tell you, oh, my character acts, or oh, Lewis's character, or somebody else at the table, or it's the baddie, and it's the baddie's this action. And so every time you draw, you might go 2 turns in a row. You might watch the baddies go 3 turns in a row because you're drawing from the bag, and that is just dynamite. It works so well, and I love it to pieces. But the thing I love more about Kinfire Chronicles is the questing, is the adventuring, and that happens before you have battles and after you have battles and in between going to city and doing city actions like you do in a lot of RPGs, or you might do in something like Gloomhaven where you have to go and do like city stuff. But that's it, and I just love the adventuring. Again, it's all about your character and what their strengths are, and you do checks and skill checks, and it's just such a clean, clever game. Every single scenario takes 45 minutes to play, and the entire game walks you through all the bits and pieces. It is a dynamite game, and again, I cannot wait to get my very own copy of Kinfire Chronicles Night's Fall in 2023. All right, everybody. See you later. Happy New Year.
G'day everybody, it's Amy and Maggie from Thinker Thema here to talk about our most anticipated games of 2023. Mine is actually a game that I did have the opportunity to play just one time at Dice Tower West.
Clearly enough that it made an impression.
It did make an impression, and it's one that I've been thinking about ever since, which I think is a good sign, and it's one that I just am really looking forward to exploring more of, and that is Last Light. Last Light was crowdfunded, and it's actually the game of Roy Canaday from the Dice Tower, so I'm sure you'd be familiar with him from the Dice Tower, and now he's made his own game, and it's a 4X game that can be played in 1 hour.
In under an hour, or just?
In our case, it was just under an hour. He timed it, he taught us, and we all played together. I think there was six of us, seven of us.
6 or
It
7
was
of
a
us.
big group.
Yeah.
And the reason why it plays so quickly is because it's all simultaneous.
Yeah.
So you choose a card out of like many different actions and a hand of cards, and everybody plays at the same time, and then most of the actions can play out without any kind of turn order. And it works just like a 4X game does, where you're kind of going out into a galaxy and you're trying to collect these shards of light. And I just really appreciate the design of it. I'm someone who likes a game that's fairly simple to teach and that can involve everybody all the time. I hate downtime in games. I hate games that are not interactive. And this one is, of course, because it's a 4X game, it's super interactive. And I like pushing myself out of my comfort zone.
Really cool hand management as well.
Yeah, great hand
kind
management.
of playing the different actions, and then at one point everyone kind of gets to draw back when the last person has sort of played that, whatever that action is that resets.
Yeah. So it is a really interesting game mechanically, and I don't usually like space themes, but this one really just intrigues me from a mechanics perspective. So I'm looking forward to getting it to the table, and with a big group of friends, because how many games do you know that are that complex that can play in under an hour?
And so many people. Yeah.
That is why it is so far one of my most anticipated games of 2023.
Well, for me, it's actually a prototype that we have right here, and that is Unconscious Mind. Now, this is from Fantasia, as the publisher Fantasia. It's got a lot of designers. I'm going to have to read them. So it's Yomasak, Laskas, Johnny
Pack.
and Johnny Pack. I absolutely adored this game. It's a fairly kind of crunchy Euro where you are contemporaries of Freud, and you're looking at meeting in the Wednesday Psychoanalytical Society, I believe it was called, and you're just looking at the best way to treat clients and help people lift these layers of grief off of them through helping them interpret their dreams. And the artwork in this is just spectacular. I love the decision space, and it was just one of those prototypes that as soon as I played it, I was like, I am in love. I can't wait to play this again and again and keep discovering what else there is in this game, and there is a lot. And I think
thematically and mechanically this game was almost just about made for Maggie.
Oh, I love it.
It is very heavy, and it's also very multiplayer solitaire, which is something Maggie loves, chipping away at her own puzzle, not being too messed with by her opponent. So I really enjoyed it, but again, I like a very interactive game, but
there are some kind of race objectives that means that it makes you look at, oh no, what's Amy got? Is she going to be reaching that objective? Maybe
that was my favorite part.
Yeah.
Absolutely, is the race objectives, and the puzzle itself is just really hard to crack. Actually, it's quite difficult to be efficient. It's got a really interesting worker placement style design where you can take more actions at once if you want to, but then when you take back your workers, you're not getting as many goodies. There's a tableau on your player board that is going to allow you to unlock these little glass beads that you actually need to put onto your resource tracker. There's so much going on.
So much goodies.
Going on.
Good stuff.
Yeah, a beautiful design. I 100% agree that is going to be up there for 2023.
Absolutely. Unconscious Mind.
Well, it seems like 2023 is going to be another big year for board games, and we are here for it.
Bring it on.
We are so excited for it. Can't wait to see what everyone else puts on their list.
Yes.
What's on your list? Please drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear about it. But otherwise, see you soon.
Bye for now.
Hey, I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex, here to talk about my most anticipated game. Of 2023. Now, it is so hard to pick one most anticipated game because there's so many great games coming out all the time. I don't know how to pick just one. That's so hard to... It's really hard to do, okay? But I've picked my most anticipated game, and that is Inside Job from Cosmos. So Inside Job is a trick-taking game with hidden role. I just keep going back to it. It's a hidden role game it's a trick-taking game with hidden roles in it, okay? So it is basically taking the idea of the crew with cooperative trick-taking and then inserting a traitor into the mix. And The Crew is one of my favorite games of all time. I love trick-taking games. I love social deduction games. Combining the two of them seems impossible. I don't know how they're going to pull this off, but I really want to try it. I'm really curious. You know what? I'm going for it now. Let's see how strong my arm is, huh? I'm just really excited to see if they can pull off this mix between hidden roles and trick-taking, because it seems like a tough thing to pull off, but I really hope that they do it. If you like the stuff that I do, I'm really happy to be on Rahdo's channel, but also come check out my channel, youtube.com/GrantLion, lion with a Y. Have fun in 2023.
Hi everyone, Paulo here again. Richard asked me to give you my most anticipated game from 2023. I'm still the Invicted one, like I showed you in the previous video. I'm going to show you off again because I'm proud of it. So here it is. Let's get back to the anticipated games of 2023. The first one that I want to mention is Hegemony. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Hegemony, lead your class to victory. Richard has a video for this on the channel. It's a very, very interesting game, a very different game. It feels like it is going to be a very different game from the usual fare that we play. Then we have Pampero, also a video on the channel from Richard. Excellent. It looks to be excellent. I really like the designer, Julian Pombo. I think Mercado of Lisboa is a very underrated game, but this one is on another level. Then it's Unconscious Mind. I don't think I have to say anything about this. It's already a big hit on crowdfunding, and everyone is talking about it. So let's get to the next one. The next one is El Burro, La Granja game from Ode. I really, really, really love La Granja. I think it's an excellent game. I like Cooper Island a lot, and Odie never misses the target. So when he comes out with a game, I'm always going to check it out. And this one, being in the same universe of La Granja, really piqued my interest. And finally, my number one anticipated game of 2023. Couldn't be any other than Inventions, the Evolution of Ideas from Vital Lacerda. I'm a big Vital Lacerda games fan. I love the weight of his games, the production, everything about it. I have played the game already in playtesting, so I already know it's an excellent game, and because of that, it's my number one and most anticipated game of 2023. So that's it. Hope you have a nice day and play a lot of excellent games. So, bye-bye.
Phew, wow. That was a lot of really good suggestions, folks. Hopefully, one or two of those maybe piqued your interest. And you may not have heard the last of some of them. They might be appearing on some of my upcoming lists as well. Before we get to that, I want to once again thank and shout out to the Brothers Murph and Christian Adventure Gamer, two different YouTube channels covering board games. I was able to use their video to show a couple of the games that had not been covered on my channel. So thanks, gang. There's going to be links for their videos down in the show notes if you want to check them out. Both are channels worth checking out, in my opinion. Okay, so now we're going to get to mine. Remember, first of all, I've got my top 10 games that I have not played. And I just want to give a little warning to some viewers. I hear this every year whenever I do my top anticipated games, like, yawn, where's all the heavy Euros? Where's the crunchy stuff that I come to Rahdo Runs Through for? Don't worry, folks. Most of those are going to be in the second list, the top 15 most anticipated that I've already played. That's not to say, though, there aren't 10 really, really cool games that I've done the research on and I'm very confident I want to give a go. So it is time to share all of that with you. Folks, let's start with number 10 on the list, Marvel Damage Control. And folks, I am very excited about this for a number of reasons. One, well, I'm just the biggest Marvel fanboy. Make mine Marvel ever since I was a little kid. And I very much love the idea of a game set in the Marvel Comics universe, not centered around the heroes, but centered around the construction crews, the normal, everyday men and women who try to clean up after the superhero battle is over. This is like a whole thing in the comics. They've started bringing it into the MCU, and they're making a game about it now. It's from designer Omari Akil. who he had a really big hit, was it 2 years ago, with Rap Gods? I haven't played that yet, but I've heard nothing but good things, so I'm very excited to see it. And then the other thing I'm super excited about is from WizKids. And here's the deal, folks. I had no idea. If you had told me a year ago that WizKids would have had 2 of my top 10 games of 2022, I don't know if I would have believed you, but they did. And so anything WizKids is doing moving into 2023, I'm very excited about. So there's a bunch of reasons to be stoked. But in addition to that, I just love the idea of, hey, okay, after the battle is over, and this destroyed battle area, this is a picture taken from a demo at PAX Unplugged, it looks like. The destroyed battle area is combined of like 2 different decks of cards. There's 4 decks of cards, one about Asgardian battles, one about Ultron battles, one about Pym particles. So you take 2 of those things together to represent the hero and the villain who are fighting. You shuffle them up, you swoosh them all down, face down, and I'm assuming you can't get to those things that are lower on the deck until you reveal the stuff that's above the deck. But all this is being done. I think it's a deck builder as well, because you have a deck of cards that represent all of your employees who have all kinds of special powers, and there's all the different refuge you're getting, based on the supervillains and the superheroes. So I just love this thematically, and they all seem like they've got interesting powers on them that you're going to build up over time. Elements from the heroes as well. And I believe the heroes are actually still hanging around. And if you do a good enough job, you can get them on side and they will help you out as well. So that all sounds very, very cool. I am really excited for this because of the designer, because of the publisher, because of the subject matter, and because of the interesting approach to it. The way that it's not just a grid of 16 by 16 cards, but it looks like, a rubble-strewn area with all the cards, and you got to dig down to find the stuff that's underneath. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it should be a very, very neat game, and that's why it comes in at number 10 on the list, Marvel Damage Control. Then we go on to number 9 on the list, Point City. Point City, which I didn't even know about until yesterday when I was doing all my research. This had completely flown under the radar. But a couple of years ago, designers Molly Shannon, Robert Melvin, and Sean Stankiewicz, who are just a trio powerhouse, the friends who are behind Flat Out Games, who are just putting out amazing, gateway level games that still have enough depth and interest level for hardcore gamers like me and Jen. They have just been putting out a string of fantastic games. And one of their biggest hits to date so far for publisher AEG was Point Salad. Very simple card drafting game where you are literally grabbing salad components to score points. So now they've done a sequel to that, Point City, build your city and score in hundreds of unique ways. And that sounds very cool to me because I believe they said there are 150 unique building cards as we are trying to build up our city in this game with all kinds of powers. There's no videos for it yet. There must be images. Yes, here they are. So, and it looks like Point Salad, they're all two-sided, so they could either represent the different resources you need, like economy, energy, ecology, community, ingenuity, which looks like a wild for all the other things, or they represent the buildings that require those resources to build, and then they've got, whatever abilities they've got. But the interesting thing is, here is a picture that was snapped, again, at PAX Unplugged. I really need to get myself to PAX Unplugged, apparently, because I would have had a chance to play this thing, or at least talk to him about it. All the cards are laid out in a random 4x4 grid. And, they're all two-sided cards, so I assume they're shuffled and all around. And what you do is, on your turn, you have to pick any 2 adjacent cards you want, and then add them to your own city that you are building over to the side. So this is, to a certain extent, exactly the same thing as Point Salad, where, hey, there were all these cards that were flipping up and you took 2 every round, but there it was much more simple. There were just 4 cards. You could take any 2 you wanted. You were kind of trying to pay attention to what's coming in the future and all that. Here, I think it's going to be a much more interesting and engaging puzzle to work out because, well, do I want a couple of resources? Do I want this building in this resource? I want that building, but the resource that I need to build it isn't next to it. What do I do? I just instantly, I look at this and I can see these are going to be fun, interesting, compelling decisions every turn as you try to decide which 2 adjacent cards do you want to grab. Somebody sees you grab a bunch of community, they might know you're going to try and build that community-based building, and maybe they're going to do something about that. Who knows? I certainly don't, because I'm just going based on having played Point Salad, which was fantastic. And again, everything from Molly, Robert, and Sean has been really, really great. Verdant was a phenomenal game that they brought out last year. And so whenever they get together, I'm excited for what they've got in mind. And in 2023, it's going to be Point City, baby. Okay, let's move on then to number 8 on the list. Divinus. Now, this actually was on my most anticipated list for last year too. Looks like they took a little bit longer to bring it out, but that's okay. I am still super stoked for it because this is from publisher Lucky Duck Games, which is cool. They do generally very high quality productions, and they do really great digital app assisted stuff as well. And this game definitely features that. But I'm more interested in the designer, Philip Malunski, because he designed one of the greatest tile laying games of all time. Capital. Although I think it got renamed to something, didn't it? What was it? I mean, look him up here. All right, a lot of people are excited about Destinies, and he did Magnum Sol back in the day. CV is phenomenal too. But Warsaw City in Ruins, which I believe was previously called Capital, is again one of the best tile layers of all time. So, Philip is coming back and doing another tile layer that just looks gobsmackingly gorgeous, just drop dead, amazingly beautiful, this game. And it is all about grabbing tiles to build up our own little biome. And, the different tiles have different icons. We're trying to do set collection and whatnot. And apparently it's driven by every round we roll dice, and we can take the results of our 3 dice and we can add them together or subtract them or do various necessary math things to be able to take, I want to get tile number 20. Well, okay, I guess I could take the 6 and a 6 and a 6 and a 2. There went 4 of my 5 dice or something like that. I'm not quite sure what the full length of it is. I watched some of Monique and Naveen's excellent run through to get an idea, and it seemed like it was fairly sharply laid out. But here's the interesting thing. I'm kind of bearing the lead, folks. Yeah, this is a gorgeous tile layer from somebody who has an amazing pedigree for tile laying games, from a publisher that's known for really wonderful productions and digital implementation of their productions. All that aside, this is a legacy game. Every game you play, you are going to be making permanent changes to the world because there is a war between gods going on, and we are demigods trying to seek the favor. According to the video I saw, it starts out with the Greek pantheon against the Norse pantheon. And so we're trying to decide, hey, what pantheon is on the rise? And that will actually change the tenor of future games. If, the Greeks rise ascendant over the Norse gods or whatever, you make changes to your dice. In the prototypes I looked at, they were putting stickers, but I think for the final game, they're removable somehow. I'm not really quite sure how that works. And like I said, there is app assistant because the game is very strongly story driven. And if you watch all the way to the end of Monique and Naveen's, they are before you play, the last thing that happens in their run through, like my jaw dropped. I almost am inclined to say don't watch to the end because you don't want that surprise spoiled for you if you play the game. But I'm glad I did because wow, those kinds of things can happen in the story driven by the choices we made in an app that is keeping track of what we're doing. Yes, please. I am excited. I have been excited about this ever since I've heard about it. And now that I've seen video of it and pictures of it, I'm as excited as I've ever been, which is why Divinus comes in at number 8. Then we move on to number 7 on the list, Earth. And honestly, this is one that was on Kickstarter in 2022. Totally missed it. I think it was running in March, and I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I am really embarrassed that I have not talked to you about this game sooner. But fortunately, a couple of weeks ago, I did top 10 crowdfunded games of 2022 with Chris George of Room and Board, which is another fantastic channel, by the way, folks. You have to subscribe. If you like anything I do, you will definitely like what Chris does. But anyway, Chris put this on his list, and he talked to me about it, and yeah, I am super stoked for it now. This is a game where we are, basically deciding the development of biomes on Earth. And this is another game that comes with a gigantic deck of cards with tons of variety, tons of variability, and gorgeous presentation of stuff from all, creatures and environments from all around the world. And it is a what do you call it? a race for the galaxy style game in that, hey, when a player's live, they pick one thing and all the other players get to follow. And so I love that mechanism, that following mechanism, whenever it shows up in games, because it's just one of the coolest ways to get interaction between players. If I can figure out what you're going to do, when you're going to zig instead of zag, I can make my plans that much stronger, and the same for you. It's why you always pay attention to your opponents in these sorts of games. Excuse me for a second. Oh my goodness. Anyway, and if that weren't enough, apparently all the cards are color-coded as well, so that in future turns, when certain colored actions or certain colored cards are played, that will activate all the previous cards you played of that color. So you can start setting up really big combo chains and whatnot, which is something Jen and I always very much appreciate. So it looks great, it sounds great, and Chris George, somebody whose opinion I very much respect, he gave it high marks, which is why I am excited for it. And Earth, just simply Earth, comes in at number 7, most anticipated game of 2023. All right, then, let's move on to number 6, Bot Factory. And now, this one I've been stoked for a while. Because it is from co-designer Vito Lasarda. He's working with, I believe, his same, was it his design partner who worked on, no, I do not know his, Yao Quintella Martins. Oh yeah, Yao has apparently done quite a few games that I'm not familiar with, but this is Vital not flying solo, but he's taking one of his most well-loved designs of all time, Kanban, or more recently Kanban EV, and changing it from a game about working in an automotive manufacturing plant and turning it into a more fun, silly, lighthearted, oh, it's a robot manufacturing plant. And the thing is, a couple of years ago, Vital worked with another designer, and the two of them took Lisboa, maybe Vito Lasarda's heaviest game to date, and streamlined it down to a little gateway-style game. And I think a lot of people were unhappy with that game because, Vito Lasarda is known for incredibly rich, heavy, big, complex games. Some of the heaviest Euros you're ever going to play. Incredibly thematic and all that. And when they stripped it down to really something that was about the same level as a Ticket to Ride, that's not what people wanted to see. So it's interesting in that they're doing the same thing again, taking Kanban, another one of his favorites, and streamlining it down, but not all the way down to Ticket to Ride level or Lords of Waterdeep level. This looks like it's coming down to a more medium weight type Euro instead of a really, really heavy one. And that's very exciting for me because I've always loved Vital's designs, but over time I found myself getting a little bit more intimidated every time one of his new games shows up because they're so complex. And so a game where it has the heart and soul. This is a worker placement game where you have one worker that is you, that you're moving around and you're trying to stay ahead of your manager, Sandra. I think her name is still Sandra in this game, actually. She's followed you from one job to another. I'm really excited to see how well Vital and Yao, or I'm sorry if I don't know how to pronounce your name, Jaoa, have kept the core alive, but brought it down into something that you can maybe get done in an hour in more of a medium weight, which is what gets me so stoked for number 6 on the list, Bot Factory. Okay, now we go on to number 5, the Bazaars of Ubar, which just finished its crowdfunding campaign. At the end of December, really flew under the radar. Obviously, putting up a game on Kickstarter in December is always a bit of a risk because people aren't thinking about backing games anymore. They're thinking about the games they got to get and put under their tree for their friends and loved ones or whatever. But when I checked out this game, I fell hard in love with it because it really engenders in me very strong Glen Moore vibes because this is a tile-laying engine builder where you're gathering, harvesting resources and storing them in your flying airship. It's kind of a fantastical Arabian Nights type setting, I believe, something like that, with flying ships and all that. But anyway, you're collecting all these resources to get them to be able to grab and build tiles. And when you put the tiles down, you build them in your own little grid. just like Glenmore. And in Glenmore, when I put a tile down, I activate all the adjacent tiles and that tile. And that one simple rule led to such wonderful, deep, crunchy gameplay, and I've loved it. I've seen very few games that have attempted anything like it. Bazaars of Ubar, I think, takes it to the next level, because when you put a tile down, it's not just that you blanket, affect or activate that tile and everything around it. Instead, these tiles have little arrows on them that tell you that, okay, activate this and everything to the right, or activate this and everything on this row. I think there's some pictures somewhere in here past all the stuff. Nope, there's not. All right, anyway, so, gosh, I could have sworn there were like the little animated GIFs, but no, there are not. Anyway, though, it looks really great to me. I'm a Glenmore to this day is still one of my favorite tile-laying games of all time, and tile-laying is one of my favorite mechanisms of all time. So something that takes the ideas of Glenmore into a new direction and does fresh, new, fun stuff with it in what looks like a very bright and inviting, colorful fantasy world. All of this makes me very excited for number 5 on the list of most anticipated games for 2023, The Bazaars of Ubar. Okay, now let's go on to number 4. Rainer Knizia, the Doctor of Design, is in the house with My Island. And now, unfortunately, there is almost no information about this game at all. Develop your island through the ages in this family-friendly legacy experience. And now that'll tell you something, because this is basically a sequel to My City. And Jen and I were blown away by Rainer Knizia trying his hand at a legacy-style game. My City was fantastic. Probably one of the best implemented legacy games I have played thus far, and I've played most of them. And if I were ever to do a top 10 legacy games, My City would rank very, very high. And the only thing that kept it from being higher is that Dr. Knizia didn't stick the landing. After you finish the campaign, you could keep playing, but a lot of the stuff that made the game so special got thrown away. I'm hoping that he learns his lesson from that and puts a little bit more work into the post game of My Island, which from this, all I can tell you is the box cover. I looked around, there's no pictures anywhere. Even though this game has gotten delayed over and over. It was supposed to be early last year. But anyway, I can tell apparently they are going to be hex tiles we're laying down instead of squares like My City. So it'll probably be a little bit more complex, a little bit more interesting. I, again, cannot stress just how fantastic My City is as a standalone legacy game. You still have a game left over, but work could have been done. My fingers are crossed that My Island sticks the landing and is even better than its predecessor, My City. And that, folks, is number 4 on the list. Okay, number 3 is one I'm very, very excited about. It is Daybreak. Now, this is from the creator of Pandemic. Matt Leacock is going back to working on, he's working on a co-op game that is not Pandemic inspired, which is, cool in of itself. And it looks like this thing really blew up on BackerKit. Was very, very successful. If I recall, he had a co-designer on this. Matteo Menepes, a designer and educator specializing in cooperative play. So that's a good team. But what is the game about? Well, it is about players working cooperatively to save the world by bringing around a green new future, which is a subject matter that has popped up recently in a bunch of games. There were a bunch of Kickstarter games over the last couple of years that have really, because obviously this is all part of the zeitgeist as more and more people are coming on board with the idea that, look, we have to turn things around. And so, why does this one stand out from all the other ones? Because, that really grabs my attention. Why do I think this might be the best game to tackle this subject matter since Vito Lasarda's CO2 that came out over a decade ago? Mr. Lasarda was so far ahead of the curve. CO2 is brilliant. But what I'm excited about with this, there's a few things. Let's see, I'm pretty sure, this one. It's all about, trying to sequester or stop the production of carbon, and which are represented by these cubes. Hey, more forestation means you can sequester. So you can sequester in the, in the forests or in the oceans. Although, the more of that, and the more carbon that you cannot take care of starts making the world temperature rise. which will lead to various and sundry disasters, pretty much all the kind of stuff you would expect. But what, there's a few things that really jump out at me. One, the game has a really strong focus, I don't know if they're going to show it here, on the effect that global warming has on communities, which is not something that generally, I mean, most games that are like this tend to focus, all right, there's no pictures of it, you'll have to take my word for it, most of these games tend to focus on the industry side. What's the effect on industry, global warming and the attempts to, curb greenhouse gas emissions? This game, we are the industry, we are the people, I should say, trying to stop it. So one of the biggest disasters is that it can affect communities because we have on our board, more and more communities are displaced or affected. And I appreciate that the message is more human-centric here than it has been in most other games of this ilk. But I stayed on this because there's another thing I really appreciate about this game. I believe 150 cards, if I recall correctly, that's how many comes with it. Each card represents a different, unique way that humanity can fight the effects of climate change, can curb our, addiction to fossil fuels and all that. And every single one of these cards literally has a QR code on it that while you're playing, you could... Oh, what? Actually, I don't really know what is this about. That sounds really interesting. I mean, with 150 cards, I guarantee you are going to hear about stuff you've never heard of before, and you can learn more about it. So this game, I mean, the interesting thing about these games, and this is true for CO2 as well, is they can tend to be a little, depressing, quite frankly, when they stop to make us reflect on what a bad job we have done so far. As a species, we've known about this since the 90s, and the industries involved, they've known about it for a lot longer, and they've just tried to keep it quiet, same way tobacco used to do. And so we are way behind the curve. And the thing is, it is so easy to just throw your hands up and say, well, whatever. It's doomed. Millions of people are going to die. There's nothing I can do about it, so why even bother? This game, because of its focus on 150 different things that the smartest of us are working on night and day around the world, I think has the potential to be a really positive, uplifting game that can remind us how, hey, when we're at our best and we work together, we can do anything as a species. We can destroy the world, but we can save the world too, which is why I am very, 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 very excited about number 3 on the list. Plus, it's always just good to see a new co-op design from Matt Leacock. Daybreak. Okay. Then let's go on to number 2 on the list, Mythwind. Okay, this was a monster hit when it was on crowdfunding. 11,000 backers, made 1.3 million, and I'm not surprised because this is the next game from the publisher of Stars of Icarios. Stars of Icarios just barely missed making my top 10 of the year, and so I'm hardcore digging this publisher's pedigree. But what I'm more excited about is this game's design, because what it's really trying to do is capture the feel of open-ended video games like Stardew Valley or what was the old Nintendo one? Animal Crossing, those kinds of games. That's just like, hey, this is a world you just live in. This is not a game to be beat. This is a world that you just want to see how it evolves and grows over time at the same time that you are growing and evolving while you explore everything you can be. And I love that. I love it when games take brave, new, bold, experimental stances. I mean, the designers were very upfront saying, yeah, this game doesn't have an ending. You just keep playing. And, every once in a while you get it out and you play it some more and you see how the world keeps changing and you're just trying to... Now, I know some people said, well, that sounds ridiculous. How can it be a game if it doesn't have, an in-game condition and victory points? Well, for folks who say that, I would like to point you to a little game called The Sims, which has proven now for decades that you can have fun gameplay without having to have a central core drive. So, bringing that idea into board games, my hat's off to these developers for doing it. That sounds really great. But then on top of that, there's also a really strong focus on asymmetrical characters, because each player, when you set up to try and help build the town of Mythwind, are playing a radically different game. And there were some people who covered this. Monique and Naveen did a great run through, if I recall correctly. I watched some folks' videos. of it. It's interesting. The different characters have completely different gameplays. If you are the crafter player, you're playing a bag builder. You know, throwing stuff, trying to draw it out of the bag to be able to craft different items. If you're the farmer, you are playing a polyomino tile laying game as you try to raise crops and feed the people of your growing town. If you're the merchant, I'm not quite sure what this one is. I kind of get the impression it's maybe an engine builder or some kind of hand management game. They don't really say much about it. When it was live on Kickstarter, they mostly, all the demos focused on the farmer and the crafter. Obviously, those were the furthest along in development. The fourth character is the woodsman, who seems like they're some kind of adventurer going off out into the woods. And again, playing some completely different game because they've got an exploration deck and a scouting deck that they're dealing with. While the merchant has, order cards, so it's probably like a recipe fulfillment thing. And what I'm very excited about is the potential for players who are playing radically different games to have my game help your game, because this is cooperative. We're all working to the betterment of Mythwind. So if I'm growing the crops that will help you fulfill the recipes you need as a merchant, I look forward to seeing how radically different games can all dovetail into the same common goal. I absolutely love that. I love the fact there's emerging narrative, that drop in and drop out play. You could play one time with your friends and they'd never have to play again because the game is just, it's like that. You can jump in, you can play solo for a while. I love everything about the freewheeling nature of this, and I cannot wait to see how they pull it off. But more than anything else, I'm very excited about the asymmetrical gameplay because everybody's, ever since Root came out, although before that there was Vast, and there's been a few more, these games that everybody's so excited about because players are playing radically different games. I love that idea, but I don't want to do it in a dudes on a map game where we're trying to kill each other, which is where the majority of the success in this new growing asymmetrical, hey, everybody's playing their own game genre has come. Last year we had Free Radicals, which I absolutely loved. And I would have loved Merchant's Cove because it was another game where everybody plays their own game, but it had a really cutthroat thing that tied everybody together. This has a wonderful communal drive that pulls everybody together, and that is much more enticing for me, which is why Mythwind comes in as my number 2 most anticipated game of the year. And finally, folks, my number 1. Hey, if there's an Uwe... Oh, gosh darn it. Sorry, folks. If there's a new Uwe Rosenberg game coming, I want to check it out. And so I have been paying a lot of attention to Oranienburger Kanal ever since it was crowdfunding on some German crowdfunding site last year. And I guess it was successful. It's from Uwe Rosenberg, the publisher Spielworks. And it's a solo or 2-player only game. And what really got my attention more than anything else, folks, if you ever want to know about games, if you're trying to anticipate, don't pay attention to me as a data point or any other channel. Go to Board Game Geek, click on the comments, and then start looking at all the comments of people who have played them. Look at the high-ranked comments, look at the low-ranked comments, and try to get an idea. But I gotta say, when one of these and then turn comments on, of course, has comments. Oh, was it a 9? There we go. Lovelace here in Hamburg, Germany, who has played it. I'm probably at Essen or something like that. Maybe one of Uwe's most brain-burning games yet. Easy to learn, a lot of planning. That gets my excitement up. Uwe Rosenberg's most brain-burnery game to date, and it's a 2-player only game about building the Oranienburger Canal in, what town is it? I'm trying to remember. I want to say Brandenburg. Was that right? Yeah, Brandenburg. Now, let's see, there's not much in the way of videos or images, but there was actually one, I think, particularly good image of some folks playing it at Essen Spiel that I think does a pretty good job of capturing what makes this interesting. It's hard, it's a worker placement game, and we've seen this from Uwe Rosenberg a lot. Honestly, I don't think the worker placement is going to do anything particularly new or novel or groundbreaking, but that's okay, because what's really all about is grabbing the cards that represent the different industries you're trying to build up in Brandenburg. But as you get all the resources to build these cards, they just sit there. They don't actually activate and do their special ability until one of two things happens. Until you completely surround them and by linking them into the transportation network by either building roads or canals. Because this is historically one of the big things. This was one of the big architectural drives of this era was this super canal that just, turned the city into the Venice of Germany. I don't know. So you're either trying to make canal spread or road spread that both have different requirements for transportation of goods. But then, so once you get a particular building you built completely surrounded on your board, it will activate once. It'll do its power once. Then you want to activate again. And to do that, there's a separate network you're trying to connect it to, because in addition to surrounding all the buildings you built, all the industries you built with the infrastructure for transportation, you also have to link them up to other buildings via bridges. Apparently that's a big deal in Brandenburg, is the bridges of Brandenburg. So I need to connect this to, if I want this to activate a second time and get its power second time, I need to connect it up to other buildings with the bridges on top of the other. And that just sounds really cool to me. I'm really, really digging this core idea. And hey, if it's one of Uwe Rosenberg's crunchiest games ever, according to one random reporter on Board Game Geek, well, you better know I want to be there with bells on when I finally get my hands on my #1 most anticipated game of the year, Oranienburger Kanal with a K. Okay, folks. Have you made it this far? I am very impressed, and so I shall reward your patience and perseverance with the top 15 games I am most anticipating in 2023 that Jen and I have already played. Some of these go back a few years, because these are all things that I was able to check out the prototype when they were crowdfunding. And so I can speak from experience. Every single one of these is crackerjack super fun. I was taking some educated guesses on that first list, but these next 15, I stand by all of them. So, folks, if you're ready to get going, and if I've got the strength to keep going, I might need another one of these. Let's start with number 15 on the list, Rolling Heights, which is a very, very cool SimCity style game from designer John D. Clare, who, most famously did Mystic Vale, but a whole bunch of other games beside. I mean, he's really known as the card crafting guy, but after this, maybe he'll be known as the rolling meeple guy, because the coolest element of this game is, rather than rolling dice or rolling cards to see what our construction crews can do to help us build up the best city of Rolling Heights, we literally roll our worker meeples into a little box. And depending on whether they lie down or they're standing on their heads or they're standing up, they can do more or less work. And I just got to say, that is an adorable joy that does not get old, rolling meeples. This is not the first game to do rolling meeples, but it does it so well. So anyway, I have played this, Jen and I played this, and I went into it assuming, this is going to be a fun little trifle of a game, a light SimCity type thing with a neat little gimmick. What really makes this game sing is not the rolling meeples into the box. It is the city building, because this has got to be one of the richer, crunchier. This isn't quite up there with urban sprawl necessarily, but this has got a lot more going on than most similar SimCity inspired board games. And Jen and I were really impressed by it, in large part because of the physicality of the game. As you build taller and taller skyscrapers, they are literally physically bigger on the board, and that just has a really great table presence. But the game comes with so many different variable objective elements to the game, just overflowing with them. Every time you play this game, you're going to get a very different feel as you're pushed to expand or build in different ways. And again, very, very impressive design. Jen and I really were very much in love with it. I cannot wait for the final number 15 on the list, Rolling Heights. Then let's go on to number 14. Aelderman. Now, this is a crunchy game. This might be the heaviest game that Jen and I played in 2022. In fact, it's kind of lower on my list because it's almost maybe a little bit too heavy for Jen when it boils right down to it. But don't get me wrong, folks. Everything on this list. I mean, I played almost 200 games last year. So to make it into my, to this short list, these are all absolutely phenomenal. I stand by them because we played them all quite a bit. But anyway, what is Aelderman about? We are members of the Hanseatic League trying to sail around the Baltic Sea and, buy low and sell high, basically, and then get back to our home port and invest in the building up of the city of Lubeck to score sweet, sweet victory points. Now, The core gameplay is very simple. On your turn, you're generally usually just going to move your ship that represents you from one city to an adjacent city and then activate the powers of those cities. And then on your next turn, you're going to do it again. Move to another city and activate power. And that sounds really simple, but what ultimately ends up evolving is, okay, I know the next 3 cities I need to go to, because if I go to that city, I'll get this. If I go to this city, I'll get that. And then all that stuff, I'll be able to, at the 3rd city, 3 turns from now, I'll be able to deliver all that and get the huge payday. But the thing is, this world is constantly in flux. You have to move it, sometimes paying extra to go faster than you normally would, because the cities themselves can change. If players get enough influence in a given city, that will change what the city produces and what the city wants. And not only that, there's this very, very cool goods production wheel that determines what all the different cities are producing. And so, hey, at one point, that city might be producing fish, but by the time you get there, there's no more fish to be had. And so you've really got so much crunch going on. And the thing is, this game is so meaty, you can really be planning 5, 6, 7 turns in advance. Okay, I know I need to get over there to the far, far east. I'm way over here in London. Right, so if I stop there, then there, then there, then there. But what if that changes? Because that's about to change. Well, okay, if I stop there, the other thing it could do would be that. And this is the big problem we had with it. Jen found she was making such big, huge combo chains in her head to try to play at peak efficiency. It was a little overwhelming. Now, me, I loved it. I'm very much a bird in the hand instead. Forget about the 2 birds in the bush. Who knows what will happen? And so, I mean, for me, the game just flowed really nice and smooth. Hey, what's available to me right where I am as opposed to what's on the other side of the world that I'm trying to work my way towards. But I do warn you, folks, if you're interested in Aelderman, check out my run-through. Links for the run-throughs of all of these are in the show notes down below. And you can get a sense for, whether it will trigger AEP, analysis paralysis, in you the same way it did in my wife. But, man, there is so much to love about this game. It's not the prettiest looking game I've ever seen, but it is one of the best, really crunchy, buy low, sell high, economic Euro simulations out there. It is number 14, Aelderman. Okay, then let's go on to number 13, Frozen Frontiers. Now, this is from Alderac. No, not Alderac. This is from Arcane Wonders and their publishing partner, Cosmodrome. The same team that brought us Aquatica, which is one of the best engine building games in years. And this is a phenomenal game about trying to industrialize a planet out in deep space and send all those resources back to Earth to save humanity. And the core gameplay is very simple. On your turn, you're either going to move your processing ship once or maybe sometimes more spaces to an adjacent location, one of the growing cities on this alien planet, and either build new industry there or activate the industry that's already there, that's been built by you and very likely other players. And as you might imagine, when you use the stuff of other players, they're very happy because they get nice passive income benefits. And so that is the core crux of the game. But what drives it is every turn, you've got a handful of cards, and when you are building, you're going to play a card. That card says what I can build, and it says where I should build it. Because if I can build the right power plant in the correct city, I will get the full benefit of that card. And that card will be unlocked as an ongoing special power I have for the rest of the game. But often, hey, I need to build this power plant right now, but the city is on the other side of the board and it'd be way too expensive for me to get over there. So I will just instead build it right now, not get the extra bonus on the card, but whenever that happens, instead you get subsidy bonuses from Earth, which come in a variety of different options as well. So this game is constantly deluging you with income from different sources so that you can smartly put it all together. And it's interesting, you track it on probably one of the most oddball resource tracking boards I've ever seen. And I'll be honest, that takes a bit of getting used to because it's negative space that represents what you actually have. Now, there's reasons for that because of how you manipulate all your goods and convert them into other things and whatnot. Long story short, the game is fantastic. It's no surprise considering the pedigree of the designer and the design house. It also features a very, very strong element of area control because the more people that build and commit to a given city, the the more they stand to score. And the more I use a city that is mostly occupied by your buildings, the more I'm potentially letting you score at the end of the game if you end up controlling that city at the end of the game. So players are really interwoven with each other every step of the way in this very, very smart action game where it's all driven by these cards that just give you so much to noodle over, so much to crunch over, that Jen and I really enjoyed it. Number 13. Frozen Frontiers. Then let's move on to number 12, Ceres, which I swear, folks, is a total coincidence that two games about setting up in industry on faraway exoplanets happen to show up. Oh, excuse me again, folks. Happen to show up right next to each other on the list. But this is a game all about mining the dwarf planet Ceres in the asteroid belt in our solar system. So while the previous game was a little bit more forward thinking because it was like on the other side of a wormhole, more future tech, this one's kind of grounded in where we are in maybe 100 or 150 years from now. And it's a worker placement game that is very, very cool because there's two types of workers in this game. There's my workers, who I can basically use in my own neck of the woods to, trigger whatever it is that I want to do. Or wait, no. I've got this wrong. I've got it backwards. I was thinking of another game where there's two different workers. Okay, so there's two types of workers. There's the workers I can use, and then there is a communal pool of workers. The workers I can use, they go out to they work very much like traditional workers. Hey, if you go over to the power plant, again, power plants in space, who knew? If you go over to the power plant, I've occupied that space, now nobody else can occupy it, and the spaces dry up fast as we're trying to develop our mining industry. But then, every round, more workers, literal workers, little meeples, come from Earth on ships, and you can see them coming. So you, in a given round, you know what type of workforce is going to show up next round, and you're already planning for it, because that is a communal pool of workers, and they are a resource that you can use on your own board. You use you use your own workers on the public board, you use the communal workers on your private board, and that is so cool and so interesting, and really pushes you to have a lot of tension in ways that you don't normally see in worker placement games. I mean, there's the normal stuff of, oh, will I be able to do the action before it's all tied up? But the other ones of, hey, I can always do this action anytime I feel like it, but can I actually get the workers to do it? Because this type of worker is always drying off, but meanwhile, this type of worker placement space is always drying up. And trying to balance those two different pressures at once and try to outthink your opponent makes for a very sharp, puzzly game. From Artipia Games, it's a real return to form for one of my favorite publishers of all time. Number 12 on the list, Ceres. Okay, now let's go on to number 11, Fateforge, the Chronicles of Kaan. And folks, most of the games I'm about to talk about on this list are big, crunchy, heavy economic simulation Euros. Not Fateforge. This is big, exciting, expansive fantasy adventure. And I love it because this does stuff. It's working in the same genre as a lot of games these days. Ever since Gloomhaven came out, whatever it was, 5 or 6 years ago, there are so many publishers out there trying to make their own Gloomhaven, a big box full of expansive narrative campaigns that you play through lots of different scenarios and level up your characters and try to get that old classic long-term multi-session role-playing game feel, but in board game form. A lot of people are pursuing that, following in the footsteps of Gloomhaven and now Frosthaven. Fateforge is in that same milieu, but they do things so differently than everybody else. Because this game, most of these games are generally, hey, following the Fateforge formula, about 80% combat and 20% other stuff, interacting with people in town and doing story stuff and leveling up your characters. This game, it's more like 50-50. And the reason for that is because combat in this game is incredibly fast and fluid, and there's no better word for it, cinematic. Because when you come in, when the story says, hey, well, you enter the swamps and you get attacked by bandits or whatever, you can very quickly, like in less than a minute, set up the board because they're built of very simple pieces, put all the bad guys out, and you are up and running in no time. And that fight between you and the bandits in the swamp or in the sewers or the dark alleys or wherever it might be is going to be done in less than 20 minutes. You're just going to be in and out. It's going to be nothing but high stakes, really, really fast-paced action driven by dice. It's kind of a dice worker placement. I have my dice. They're all special custom-faced dice that you can use to activate your different powers, and every turn you are trying to puzzle out what is the best way to use my dice to backflip and fire 3 arrows while I'm still in the air and pin somebody to the wall and all kinds of just cool, fun, like fantasy superhero stuff. Like this game makes you feel like Legolas at peak Legolas. I'm talking about Hobbit Legolas, not Lord of the Rings, when Legolas was literally doing insane, impossible stuff. This game gives you that feel that you are literally a fantasy superhero, just cutting through the bad guys like butter, and it's so fun and cool and satisfying. And again, it just feels really cinematic, while still being smart, because it's all driven by the same dice system that from the same developer designer, Gordon Kalea. What was it called? Vengeance. Vengeance was a bigger, crunchier, more robust game, all about kind of reliving a revenge flick from the 70s or 80s. This is high fantasy, set in the Fateforge universe, which apparently is a very successful pen and paper RPG system, but. Again, you can watch my run through. You can watch run through for all of these to get a better sense for what it's like. But when I think about this, I think it's just so exciting that, in a given 2-hour session of this, we might have 3 big epic conflict sessions instead of 1, because it's just always going, and it's just a blast. And it is number 11 on the list, Fateforge, Chronicles of Kaan. Now, let's go on to number 10. Back to the crunchy Euros, folks. It is Darwin's Journey from Simone Luciani and the story Manticore, I believe. No, story. I might be getting your name wrong. I apologize. But anyway, this is a worker placement game where we are kind of trying to follow in the footsteps of Darwin, visiting all the same islands he visited on the Beagle, studying the flora and fauna, trying to make observations, engaging in correspondence with scientists from around the world, and scoring lots of points along the way. So already, I very much enjoy the subject matter. I mean, this is really, Darwin, the Euro, basically. You really get to feel like, in Eurogame mechanisms, this is me, living that life, changing the world. So that's all very cool. But that's theme. The gameplay is equally cool because it is a worker placement game that does some very cool stuff. You start out with a few assistant workers and several different worker placement spots on the board. But each of your workers has one particular area of expertise, whether they are good at exploring or sailing or corresponding or investigating or whatever it is. So if I'm going to play my green worker, because green is the color for exploration, there are some things, some worker placement spots he literally cannot do because he just doesn't know how to do that stuff. But there's other things where, if he does this particular action, he'll get bonuses. So the interesting thing about this game is you start with these workers, you can get more workers, but more importantly, over the course of the game, you train your workers to get access to different abilities. And I really love that investment idea. These workers literally on your cards have pictures. So you start to get a real sense of connection with them in a way that generally does not happen in games where you're just sending your little meeples around. Even Agricola, which is so thematic and a poor struggling family about to starve, I do not feel a connection with them the same way I feel a connection with these because I can see them. I got a picture of them. I wish I had names for them too, but I can make up my own names. But anyway, so they all have special abilities. They all have strengths and weaknesses, and over the course of the game, you can invest in them to get more strengths to offset their weaknesses. And I love that. Because worker placement games I think are so successful amongst Euro-style games because the worker is a conduit for you to kind of project yourself into the world. Most Euros, you're completely an abstract entity just moving resources from one place to another. In a worker placement game, that's my buddy, I see them. So a game that doubles down on that and really makes them characters who you can kind of connect with and invest in, that really elevates things to the next level. And then, and I'm just scratching the surface. The worker placement action spots also change and evolve over the course of the game, which is very, very cool, in different ways every time. Also, this game has one of the best player scaling for 2-player systems I have seen since Year of the Dragon from Stefan Feld. And all other worker placement games should study this to know how to do it right, to make a game that was designed for more players to work brilliantly at 2. This game is fantastic. It's been a long time coming. I covered it a couple of years ago on Kickstarter, but I think it's finally coming out in 2023, which is why it comes in at number 10 on the list. Darwin's Journey. Okay, let's go on to number 9. Ahau, Rulers of Yucatan. And another big crunchy thing. And one thing I really should say about this game that I was very impressed. The developers worked very, very hard with, professors and scholars and even the indigenous people of the Yucatan. I mean, they actually got a scribe of ancient Incan language, who is still alive today, to be a contributor to this game to make sure that they really nailed the verisimilitude and, weren't taking liberties with, this cultural heritage that they were trying to represent. And first of all, I just want to doff my cap to them for that. But all that aside, how does the game play? It's very, very cool. Because on the surface, it kind of almost feels like an area control game. You've got all these different regions in the Yucatan, and every round, each player is going to simultaneously play 2 cards. One card says, where do I want my ruler to go? Which region? And they're all numbered 1 through 5, I think, or 1 through 6 or something like that. And the other card I play is, how badly do I want to go there? Because it's like an initiative speed card. So if I try to go to area 5 and I played a 2 and you played a 3, oh, I'm sorry, you can't get there because I got there first. Kind of a thing. Very Gloomhaven initiative style thing, which I always love whenever I see it. But the interesting thing about this game is you can only go to any given region once in a round. So sometimes you will be desperate to go to a region a second time, and you can't go there because you've already played that card. Here's one way you could do it. Go to an adjacent region that you think I'm going to go to and play a low initiative so that you will get kicked out. You want to get kicked out by me so that you can hopefully bump to where you need to go. And I love that. I mean, I've often talked about worker placement bumping as a really great mechanism. This is, I guess, kind of an offshoot of that, and it's so cool. And honestly, I am just talking about one of the dozen, or at least half a dozen, different gameplay mechanisms that all comes together here. A big part of what we're doing is harvesting resources to build up these pyramids in this wonderfully puzzly side element, or you could ignore that and focus more on area control of the main board, because we're trying to get more of our followers in all the cities around the Yucatan, although we end up spending them to do other stuff, so we kind of lose our grip on area control. Everything about this game is fantastic. Oh, and then one more thing. This game is so overloaded with great ways for players to interact with each other. There are these wonderful little pyramids that are randomly generated every time you play that have objectives on them. And if I get enough influence on that, then I'm going to score that particular objective. But I'm not going to score that objective on how well I harvest that resource or build that thing. I'm going to score that objective based on, however, the best player in the game does it. So all of a sudden, if I see somebody's doing really good at pyramid building, then maybe I want to be an investment in pyramid building, not because I did a great job of it, but because you did. And that stuff is so neat. There are a lot of very, very cool ideas, all driven by an incredibly tension-filled core action selection mechanism that I really adored, as did Jen, which is why we've got it at number 9, Ahau, Rulers of the Yucatan. Okay, then let's go on to number 8, CoLab. Which is CoLab, I believe is the way it's spelled. And that is obviously short for collaboration. And this is a Frankenstein's monster, mad scientist experiment, worker placement style game with some of the best, most charming art I have ever seen. I do not know who the artist on this game is, but man, I need to see their art in more stuff, because every card for every science experiment that you try to engage in is just gorgeous and incredibly warm and charming too. I absolutely love the look of the game, but that's not what makes the game so special. This is a worker placement game. Where I've got 2 types of workers. I've got my main scientist, my mad scientist, who I have my own special powers, and then I've got my minions, and I can send myself out or my minions out. The interesting thing is my minions are actually powered by dice. I have to plug these dice into my little minion worker, send them out. That indicates, what they're going to be able to do out in the world. But here's the thing. Once I put a minion out into the world, onto the board, and they're sitting there, they are available to everybody. Because what we want to do as our mad scientists, we want to actually place ourselves in the labs, whereas the minions go into the hallways between the labs. So if I place a minion between the orange and the purple laboratory, that minion can help me or you or anybody else if you send your main scientist to the purple or the orange laboratory. And so I might have gone there because I needed the benefit that my minion gave me, but that was the last thing you needed. Suddenly I need to change all my plans and go to that purple lab because that last extra minion lets me finish what I needed to do. And so this is a game of collaboration. You are constantly sending your own minions out there to try to complete your own stuff, but also paying attention to what your opponent does as well. And it's just wonderfully done. Really, really sharp. The thing that makes this game so special, I love the fact that they literally put it in the title. This is a competitive game of collaboration, and it's great. It looks fantastic, plays fantastic, and I suggest everybody take a look at it when it comes out in 2023. Number 8, CoLab. Okay, now let's talk about number 7, Copan, Dying City. Which, by the way, is another game where the developers did their due diligence and spoke with academics and cultural experts and brought them on board to make the game a more well-rounded experience. So again, my hat's off to them. I just want to keep shouting praises until it just becomes the norm, and it's just something everybody does. Because if you're going to try to represent a culture in your board game, why not give back to that culture by having them help you make the game better? Fantastic, and I'm glad that they were able to do it with Copan Dying City. But what is the game itself? It is about the final days of the Incan Empire. We are in Copan, the center of the empire. It is a dying city. And it's interesting. At the beginning of the game, it's a worker placement game where, like some of the other ones I've mentioned today, we have a single worker. And in the early game, there are resources aplenty. And whatever you do, you're just constantly bringing in resources because we're at the height of the empire. Everything is great. And you can achieve any kind of goals you want very quickly. But over the course of the game, as round after round passes, more and more worker placement spaces get compromised or shut down because the Incan Empire is dying. We are in its waning days. And so what starts out as a big smorgasbord, do whatever you want, wherever you want, when you want, as the game goes on, things get tighter and more constricted. And stuff that was easy at the beginning of the game becomes all but impossible to do by the end of the game. And that is such a cool reversal on what is by far the standard arc of a Euro, where you start out small and you end up big. Here, you start out huge. The world is your oyster, but by the end of the game, you can barely rub two sticks together as you're desperately trying to finish those last few objectives. And I think that is such a cool, interesting twist. I enjoy it for that. But then I also enjoy it as a worker placement game because, like I said, I've got one worker that represents me. If I send myself to one of I think it's like 5 or 6 different locations on the board, the thing is, I'm not committing myself to just doing that action once, but doing it 3 times in a row. Because if I do an action once, I get a weak version of it. On my next turn, if I stay there and do it a second time, I'll get a better version. And on my third turn in a row, successively, if I stay there again, I'll get the really super action. And so this game requires a lot more long-term planning because, you know what? I might not care about the first or second. Am I going to effectively kind of take myself offline for 2 turns so I can get that really big one? But, oh my gosh, another space opened up over there. I really need to jump over there, but I haven't made it to the top of the one I'm already working on. Excuse me again. So cool. This game is chock-a-block full of really fun ideas, great thematic presentation, respectfully done, and I recommend it. Number 7 on the list, Copan, Dying City. Folks, but now let's talk about number 6. Oh, this one is even better. Jiangnan, Life of Gentry. And now, this is set in Far East Asia. I forget what time, kind of a Renaissance era, before the Age of Industrialization, if I recall correctly. One of the older dynasties. I'd have to go back and look up. I should go back and look it up, but I don't have time, and I'm very under the weather. So, but folks, I mentioned all of that if you go check out the run-through itself. But what is it? This is, what'd you call it? I guess you call it a bag building game because I have a bag full of chips. And at the beginning of a round, I'm going to draw 4 of those chips out of the bag, and I'm going to place them above my board. And each chip has 2 actions. And on my turn, I am going to pick one of those chips to do whatever the top action is. And that's basically kind of the equivalent of a worker placement. My wife just came in with more. Oh, thank you, honey pie. The other stuff went very cold. Oh, we interrupt this number 6, folks, for some honey tea brought in by Jen. Thanks, honey. Oh, my goodness. Oh, what was I talking about? Okay. Alrighty. Right. So, I activate the top action, which basically means I get to activate, the market or the countryside or the rich gentry or whatever it is. And each different action lets you do different things. But we are artisans in this game. Our job is to make the greatest works of art, whether it is literal paintings or poetry, or was the third one songs, if I recall correctly? Or maybe it's poetry and drama, putting on dramatic productions, poetry and art. And the thing is, the wants and needs of the people of Jiangnan are changing all the time. I mean, there's kind of like a pop culture element to this game. Hey, for the next couple of years, it looks like paintings might be hot, and I should really go into paintings. But based on choices players make, it might be, oh, you know what? Paintings didn't turn out to be quite so hot after all, and I made the wrong investments. There's this really, really cool system that kind of tracks what is popular in the culture of the time. But back to the original action selection. So anyway, I pick one of my chips, any of the 4 that are up there, to do the top action. But 2 chips are going to get spent in a given turn. One of them I keep, and it's going to go back in the bag to be used later. The other one, whichever one is furthest to the right of all my chips, gets removed from the game, gets destroyed. But I get the bottom action on it, which is some kind of idea, or it's the resource. Our resources are inspiration for art, drama, and poetry, if I recall correctly. So every turn, you are going to do one action and harvest one resource. But while you're choosing that, you are also picking one of your very limited chips that are in your bag that will get destroyed and removed from the game. And so that then, moving forward, is one less opportunity to do whatever was on the top of that chip. And maybe you say, hey, you know what? I'm really not going to go to the muse's house anymore. I can afford to let this chip go. But maybe that's part of your strategy, and you don't want to let that go, but you really want to get that yellow inspiration it would give you if you let it get trashed. Now, over the course of the game, you will be able to get bigger, more powerful chips. So it's a good thing that you're replacing the old ones with new, bigger, powerful ones, but can you get the ones that fill in the shortcomings you might have based on the shifting cultural preferences of the city? And I love how all this comes together. It's really nice and thematic. That core mechanism for how to select actions is one of the coolest, freshest I've seen in a long time, and it is a big, crunchy, satisfying game. Man, I didn't even talk about the ships and how... I could talk about this a lot more, but you can watch my run-through to see more, folks. I'm going to stop right there at number 6, Jiangnan. And now, folks, here's where I pull a bit of a sneaky Pete, because the final 5, numbers 5 through 1, I have already recorded that video a couple weeks ago when I got together with Chris George of Room and Board Game Reviews. And it's a whole different video that I now have to direct you to. You can hit that eye in the top right corner screen. You can follow the links down in the show notes. Now, I know we're at 2 hours already. You might not want to go watch another video, so avert your eyes if you don't want spoilers. People who don't mind spoilers, there they are right there on screen. Okay, you can look again, folks. If you didn't see them, you could rewind and pause. But if you'd like to know why those 5 I just flashed on screen made the top spots, well, you know where to go. Oh, and you know what? It occurs to me now, I should have said this right from the get-go. But I don't want to have to re-edit the intro, so I'm just going to say it now. When you go and check out those final 5, or any of the... 15 plus, or 10 plus 10, the 20 that I've already talked about. One thing to bear in mind is I was, for the most part, avoiding 2.0 re-envisioning of games, stuff like that, because I generally, when doing this, like to really focus on completely new games. So, I know there's a super deluxe version of La Granja and Castles of Burgundy coming out, and of course I would love those. The next iteration of Aeon's End is coming. Yeah, of course I love Aeon's End. But I kept off all the sequels, all the spin-offs, with one exception, and all the 2.0 deluxeifications, really just to focus on all new games that you could find out about, and then go on Board Game Geek, or in some cases watch some of my videos and learn more. Right, so that was it, folks. I am spent. So all you gotta do now, you can push that thing right there to go check out me and Chris doing the last bit. Numbers 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Go ahead and click. It's just waiting for you. What are you waiting for? What will it take to make you click this thing right here? Come on. I don't know how long this is gonna take. My voice is getting too... Okay.